This is my car stereo, and as you can see right here, I'm missing the power volume knob. One of my kids hopped into the car the other day with their soccer backpack, and it came across the console, hit the button, and broke it. So today I'm going to attempt to turn a replacement knob for the stereo. Here's the old power knob, and if you look inside of it, you can kind of see half of a plastic circle there. There's the other half of it right there. That's the piece that broke. Now that plastic circle used to house this little metal clip. And this little metal clip is what holds the knob onto the shaft. What I've got here is a little ring that sets behind the knob, and there's a light behind the radio that shines, and the plastic allows it to shine behind the knob so that you can see the knob in the dark. I went through my scrap bin and I found a nice little chunk of Padauk, and it's plenty big enough to be able to get my knob out of, so that's what we're going to use. I've chucked up my piece of Padauk between centers, and all I want to do now is just true it up. I've got my blank trued up, and I took my old knob and I've used my calipers to find just how large it is. By looking at the piece of wood that I have on the lathe, I can see I still have some room to work with, which is good. What I'm going to do now is get this flipped around and get it in a chuck, and then I'm going to use my Jacob's chuck to drill an 11/64" hole up the center, and then we'll go ahead and start turning this to the proper shape. I've got my blank turned around in the chuck, and taking a closer look at the end of the blank, you'll notice there's a crack there. I'm going to go ahead and fill, and there's also one on this side. I'm going to fill these cracks with CA glue, shoot them with some accelerator, give them a chance to sort of dry. I'm hoping they're not very deep, and then I'm going to come back with my parting tool, and I'm going to part this off about right here and get rid of the most of the crack. That way I'm dealing with a very small section. Using my parting tool, I cut fairly far back on the blank, and quite honestly, I probably didn't need to use the CA because it looks like, judging from the face of this, there are no cracks left, so I basically removed them all. I'm going to go ahead and drill an 11/64" hole into the end of the blank, and I've set a piece of tape here as a stop so that I don't go any deeper than absolutely necessary. Well, I neglected to turn the camera on as I drilled the hole, but you really didn't miss anything too exciting. I just basically ran the bit in up to the piece of tape, and I have a nice hole right in the center of my blank. I swapped out the jaws on my chuck, and I chucked up a piece of scrap pine, and I just basically knocked the edges off of it. And then I took my parting tool and made sure that the face of this piece of pine was perfectly flat, just like the face of my button, so the two made up nicely. What I'm going to do now is take my 11/64" bit, and I'm going to drill a hole straight through this, all the way through into the center of the chuck. Now the chuck is hollow, so I don't have to worry about hitting any metal or anything. Once I get that hole all the way through here, I'll then be able to use this drill bit to register this and center it perfectly on this jam chuck. Before I attach this to my pine faceplate, there's one additional thing I need to do. You remember this little plastic piece that goes behind the knob? It's got a little offset on it, and it needs to go inside of the knob. So what I did is I went over to my drill press, and I put this in my pin jaws, and basically just took a Forstner bit and drilled just far enough down to where that is seated right against the bottom of the button. So now what I'm going to do is go ahead and get this glued to my pine block, and we'll finish turning the knob. Here's my thought process on this. If I take this drill bit and insert it into the hole that I made, and then I take a glue gun, and let's go ahead and insert this into here, and I take a glue gun and I put a bead of glue all the way around this. Now I hold it against the chuck for a few seconds. Size-wise, I'm right where I need to be at the bottom of the button. It gets a little thick up here toward the top, but I'm not too worried about that because I need to go ahead and mark about how tall or how long I want this button to be. So let me get that done. What I'm going to do is go ahead and continue to clean up the front of this piece of Padauk and sort of round it down to where the actual tip of the button is right where this line is, and then it'll curve back. So that'll allow me to clean this little thick area up. I think I'm going to stop right there. I am just so close to where I need to be. The calipers are very tight. I think once I hit this with some sandpaper and kind of shape it up a little bit with the sandpaper, I think that will give me a nice clean appearance. I've got the buttons sanded up to where it looks really nice. I'm going to go ahead and clean it with some denatured alcohol, and then I think I'm going to go ahead and put a CA finish on it. And the reason I'm going to put the CA finish is, being a radio knob, it's going to get a lot of use. So the hands will be touching it all the time, and that'll keep the knob looking nice. A little bit of denatured alcohol. That's 3 quick coats, and it's looking really good. The thing about Padauk, when you put a CA finish on it, is Padauk's a very grainy wood, kind of like oak. It has a lot of pits in it. So I'm going to end up putting quite a few more coats of CA on here because I want to fill those pits. Otherwise, when I put the polish on, it's going to dry in those pits, and you're going to have these little white marks all over the Padauk blank. And I really don't want that. I want it to look really nice when it's polished up. So I went ahead and put 2 coats of a medium CA on here because I wanted to fill the grain a little faster. It looks nice, it's drying well, but something occurred to me, and that is I need to cut this back a little bit. Otherwise, I'm going to have a nice lip at the end of this of CA, and I don't want that. I would rather cut this back a little bit so that they're level, or this is a little lower than the button, and then just finish the CA right onto the pine, and then I could take the parting tool and cut it right off, and I won't have to worry about a little lip at the end of it. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this down. Okay, I'm now below the surface, so I'm just going to clean this up a little bit, get all the dust out of here. I probably will run a little denatured alcohol over it again just to make sure everything's nice. And then we're going to go back and put a little more CA on there, finish it up. I lost track of how many coats of CA I put on it, but I'm going to go ahead now and polish it up. I did micro mesh the blank. I should have mentioned that. I'm going to take my parting tool and attempt to very carefully separate this from the waste block. Now the thing to keep in mind is the drill bit that I used to register this is still in there. So I got to be really careful as I get down toward the center, but I'm hoping that the glue, the hot glue, will let go prior to that. It started to give a little bit, so I think what I'm going to do is very gingerly, there we go. That's what I was hoping would happen. Nice. And there's the knob. What I'm going to do now is just take it to a piece of sandpaper and rub it on a flat surface like the cast iron top of my table saw to rub the rest of this pine off and to get rid of the rest of this glue. Matter of fact, I may be able just to pick it off. I think I'll try that first, and if it doesn't work, then I'll use the sandpaper. Here's a little better look at the radio knob. The Padauk is gorgeous. I lost track of how many coats of CA I put on there, but I'm real happy with how it looks. Here's the back piece, and as you can see, it seats right in there. That'll let the light shine behind it so I can see it at nighttime. There's one last thing left to do, and that is I need to file a flat spot on one side of that hole to accommodate this clip. I know you can't see it real well, but see that flat spot on top there? It needs to be able to accommodate the flat spot so that this can slide onto the radio knob shaft in the car. So I'm going to use just a jeweler's file. I'm going to file that out, get this seated back in there, and then we'll go try it on and see how it looks in the car. Here's a shot of the Padauk knob installed on the stereo. It works great. I don't want to turn that on too long and get busted for copyright infringement. It controls the volume. In a second here, I'll splash a picture on the screen that'll show the stereo after dark, and you'll see the little plastic ring behind it that lets the light shine behind the knob so that you can see it in the dark. Overall, I'm very happy with how this turned out. I'm so happy that I think these three knobs, as well as the climate control knobs, are going to get removed and made as well. So this was a fun project. I'd like to thank everyone for following along. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. If you're not a subscriber, please consider subscribing to my channel. That way all of my future videos will be delivered directly to your YouTube feed. If you really liked my video, do me the honor of sharing it and let others discover my channel. I want you to know that you are always welcome in my shop. Come back and see me again real soon, and everybody have a great evening.